Hello and welcome to The Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. In addition to the persistent challenges that children do have to face, be it in terms of health, be it in terms of nutrition, or for that matter, be it in terms of education, we also see that with the boom of social media, the use of internet, there are a lot of complaints coming forward on part of young adults, on parts of children, more so relating to cyberbullying, relating to online harassment. And recently, we've also been seeing this trend of, children defying their family expectations, the social cultural norms of the society, falling prey to a lot of things which do happen in the cyber world. Having said that, in this context, it's very important for us to analyze the fact that, what then is the role of media, especially when it comes to protection of, when it comes to promotion of child rights in our society today. Media may be considered to be the fourth pillar of the state, but at the same time, it has a very important responsibility on it to actually report in a manner which is not only responsible, it is sensible, and of course, it is constructive too. How is media executing this duty in Pakistan? And when we talk about media literacy, why is it so important now, more so when it comes to reporting on child rights? And last but not the least, what changes can we bring not only to actually improve media's reporting on child rights, on sensitive issues relating to vulnerable segments in the Pakistani society, but overall to improve the quality and the standard of the Pakistani media too. This and much more we'll be talking about in our today's show. And to do that, let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Miss Adia Zehra, who is a journalist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Fatma.
You're most welcome. My second panelist for the show today is Dr. Shazif Shamim, who is a psychiatrist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And via telephone line, I'll be joined by Miss Afsha Tehseen, who is the chairperson of National Commission on the Rights of Child. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Madam, I would like to start the show with you. We understand that, NCRC is working to create a responsible, enabling as well as a protective kind of an environment for children. But having said that, I believe there is some misconception about its very role and mandate. So for the clarity of the audience, can you explain that what all comes within the mandate of NCRC? Is it just limited to monitoring of laws and policy? Does it also extend to, media sensitization, more so when it comes to, implementation of child rights?
Thank you very much, Fatma, for raising this very pertinent question. Basically, we need lots of clarity about commissions and about the government departments and institutions. The basic difference is that commissions are primarily the National Human Rights Institutes, which are autonomous bodies, which has a mandate to monitor, oversight, and recommend to the federal and provincial governments. And they are constituted, under Paris principles, and they are the watchdogs of society. And unlike commissions, the government departments, ministries, they are the service delivery institutions. Their role is to provide services to all, the right bearers, right holders. And that is the big difference, because just today I was reading a tweet given to us that, do this, do that, and they had no idea what is the role of commission, what is the role of the ministry, who is supposed to do that, job for child rights.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Eli. I think we must also talk about this in the context of media. That when we talk about, of course, child rights, media has a very important role to play this way. We have seen several actors, them endorsing social causes more so when it comes to child rights. And we've also seen actors filing writ petitions to actually, get child rights enforced. But at the end of the day, if you were to analyze the Pakistani media, because you, of course, come from there, how often do you see such issues being given screen space, and not just being given screen space, I think also the right kind of screen space?
I think not enough. They're not discussed enough. Definitely needs to be addressed more efficiently, and there needs to be more content, especially on, the way children need to protect themselves and what role parents can, play in order to make them more aware of their rights. And, especially the issue of sexual abuse of children is, I think, a very grave issue that needs to be taken up by the media. But I don't think that it's done enough. I know we're talking about media here, but government also needs to play a role in that they kind of endorse such campaigns. We have a human rights ministry that can, start awareness campaigns, collaborate with the media house.
Or the human rights ministry was doing it, I remember, some time back, basically,
Yeah,
with actors. But I think maybe they need to be
initiatives
more,
are taken,
persistent, more perseverant that way. But I think other than that, when we talk about media per se, I personally feel that, we should have more of such shows, like talk shows, talking about these issues, and not just in a way where you're just glorifying the atrocities which are committed against children, in a way in which you're also proposing solutions. So how do you view this issue?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, as far as the awareness part is concerned, we have nothing about how to protect oneself from sexual abuse. So if that is added to the curricula and the media as well, since your question is about media, so that can be, we can have different awareness cartoons can be made on that subject, just a 1-2 minute video which is interactive and which basically tells children that what to do, how to act when you think that somebody is trying to harass them or something,
how to say no, basically. I think that is
exactly.
such an important
And
part.
also parents need to be made aware as well. Sometimes they're not able to kind of identify the signs that the child is showing that somebody is harassing them or teasing them, so they need to be made aware as well. And the other thing about media is that the way these cases are addressed.
Right, Elia, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Dr. Sab. I think we must also talk about this whole argument in the context of, healthcare professionals, psychiatrists, or for that matter, psychologists like yourself, who have a very important role, because a lot of times we see that children who are abused, who are subjected to violence, come to people like yourself, of course, looking up to you, wanting to seek treatment. So how do you see these trends evolving over a period of time, like in terms of children, their families being more vocal to reaching out to professionals like yourself?
I must really appreciate, Fatima, the topic which you have selected today is actually very much related to the topic of your show. The society which actually exists in this world, in our own culture, in our own city, in our own country. There is a parallel society existing on the cyber world, which actually comes in the form of social media or the internet websites and everything. Now, your concern and her concern has been that how children could be protected, and you were talking to Ms. Afshan about the protection and the prevention of this issue.
Right.
We need to, being a mental health professional and being a practicing psychiatrist, I must say that there is a very valid evidence-based approach towards this problem of the modern era.
Right.
It can be classified on the basis of the biological factors which the children are suffering from,
right,
and the psychological factors which the children are suffering from, and the social factors which they are suffering from,
right,
and also their interpersonal skills.
Right. But sir, with you, I think we should focus more on the psychological aspect.
Psychological aspect. So first thing is that the psychological aspect is optimistic in many ways that the young lot is nowadays using this gadget for various productive ways. We are seeing kid entrepreneurs and the young children, they are making a lot of excellent content for regarding their hobbies and regarding their academics, regarding the plaything. But the problem is when it comes to abuse and exploitation or the emotional blackmailing or the negative or the hazardous aspects of it, it accounts to the freedom of the child has to be taken very seriously here. The freedom with responsibility is something which the modern child needs to learn.
And also the media needs to learn. I think the entire society needs to learn that way.
Starting from the children, first of all, they need to learn it. Then the parents, they need to learn it. The parental watch, especially before 18 years of age, the parents should be knowing what's happening in the electronic gadgets of their children.
Right. On which I'll come to you, madam. I think we must talk about the interesting campaigns that, NCRC has been running with PEMRA, the purpose of which has been actually to basically make people aware about, protecting child rights and how precisely can they do so. So tell us more about such, campaigns of yours, how effective and successful have they been, and can we expect some positive action coming out of them? Because we see that, awareness is one thing, but, awareness being translated into positive concrete action, that of course would be hitting the nail on its head.
I personally believe, and that's what I am now advocating and asking all the government institutions, that awareness raising is one of the most effective ways and means to sensitize our public, because prevention is better than cure.
Right.
And having said that, I primarily when I joined as a chairperson, National Commission on the Rights of Child, I took that as a challenge because I believe this is far more economical. The outreach and impact is greater due to this digital technology. So I straight away went to the chairman Pamra and I requested him that commission being very new, having resources constraints, you should just extend support to this newly established commission. And based on that, the PAMRA, has not only been dealing and addressing our individual complaints of child abuse, if it is pertaining to any, case or any TV channel, but on the whole, they have been telecasting our video clips regarding child protection, child rights on various, channels and on YouTube, on cable networks, and they just recently sent us a very thick report that our videos have been aired 2,500 times across local and national television channels. So this is, I must say, a big achievement. On the other hand, we have also engaged Ehsan Khan, who is a very renowned media celebrity and an actor. So he has been, helping the commission a lot on raising voices, speaking on various TV channels, giving statements, and just creating awareness and visibility about child rights.
Right. But I think in this regard also, I think Ehsan Khan is just one of them. We've generally also seen this trend where other actors, I remember Shahzad Roy, he also filed his petition in the Islamabad High Court, asking for some relief from, child domestic labours that way too. So I think it's a positive trend that we see in celebrities as well, who are now more cognizant, they are more aware of child rights causes and they actually want to advocate for them. On which I'll come to you, Elia. I think we must also talk about this in the context of the responsibility which lies on media. So in this regard, I think being the only journalist here on the panel today, we must talk about this in the context that, whereas of course media is under a duty to report, to inform people about their rights, to educate them, so to speak, in a more responsible and of course in a more, constructive manner. So as a journalist, where do you draw the line?
I think there are several issues when you talk about child rights. If you're talking about media as well, I think I would first like to address the grave issue of child sexual abuse and how media covers it. So I think there are not many awareness campaigns, not enough educative material on media, on mainstream media that can help the governments, the authorities to tackle this serious issue. And I think that if there are more such campaigns where awareness is raised on how children can protect themselves when they face sexual harassment of any kind, if they're aware, if they're made aware of the difference between good and bad touch, and especially their parents are also kind of educated on how to notice or identify a sign when a child behaves a certain way after they face any such encounter or any such kind of harassment. So that I think can play a major role. I think media does not take that responsibility also because it does not give a lot of rating, but also because it is considered a sensitive issue, unfortunately, where awareness is not there. Extremist quarters say that, okay, you cannot talk about this openly.
Personally, I feel, you may beg to differ, that social media is where more of the problem arises, because you see it's such a porous kind of a medium, so fluid that it's very easy to do something and perhaps get away with it. So at the end of the day, responsible journalism, ethical journalism, how can we exercise that vis-a-vis in case of upholding child rights, because it is a very sensitive area at the end.
Of course. So objectification of children needs to end on media, and the way such cases are covered. For example, if there is a case of a mainstream, a high-profile case of a child marriage, a person who is a girl who is not of 18 years of age, she is a minor and she is getting married to a politician, for example, and media is covering it in a way that so as to glamorize it and say that it is such a development that needs to be celebrated. The man
has to be sensationalized rather than
so
it being
this is something that we need to
objectively.
condemn. That a child cannot consent to marriage, a child cannot get married, and if it happens, it is not a matter to be glamorized.
The narrative which is being set, that needs to be changed. I think that is very rightly put by yourself. But here I think a lot of responsibility does lie on journalists like ourselves too, who in turn need to be sensitized about the issue, because if you are not sensitive towards something, how can you report on it sensibly?
I would just like to add that if there is, for example, a case of child sexual abuse that we are covering as journalists, you need to know what kind of questions you need to ask. You cannot ask the the victim's parents that, how you're feeling about it, and just to get ratings or get views on your YouTube channel.
You need to know where you need to draw the line at the end. You can't be very intrusive, basically.
Yeah, and the way it is covered, the victim's identity needs to be protected, and the way it is covered covered, their information should not be, made public, because media does do that. Their passport, their images of their ID cards are made,
and of course, by the law, as we all
media.
understand that, you can't do that until unless you have consent. You have to even, blur the images of the person who you're, showing. Somebody
Unfortunately, that is not understood by our media persons, and especially with so many social media channels who consider.
I think the main problem is with, I think, the regulation of social media, on which I'll come to you. Sir, I think in this regard, you must also clarify to the audience that, when we talk about such games, especially those which incite violence in children and young adults that way. So, explain to us that is it just by merely playing that game, or is it in combination with other factors as well, as you just mentioned?
It is actually being an addict to that game.
Right.
And these kind of children nowadays are very commonly seen in the psychiatric clinics and the psychiatric rehabilitation centers, because they develop a very dangerous mental health disorder, which is known as paranoid psychosis or psychosis. So this psychosis or the paranoid psychosis can make a child suspicious towards the family members and the people around, that they are planning against him, because he spends 12 hours, 18 hours in the game. And when he comes to the real world, he starts actually visualizing, and his perception actually starts getting sync with the real world. And he starts developing a paranoia that these all people are against me. Then he arranges for a weapon and tries to kill them and shoot them, so that he feels safe about himself.
Right. And I was reading this report which said that at least in the US, that children 8 years and above, if they are really exposed to violence through media one way or the other, they are more likely to become hardened criminals when they grow up. So at the end of the day, I think there is a very vicious cycle which follows.
They become serial killers, and you see it brings dopamine neurotransmitter changes in brain, which the heroin does, or which the cannabis does, or which the street drugs does. So it's actually one of the leading cause nowadays of the violence amongst the children, because the bullying and the harassment, they become so small in front of this psychosis.
Although, sir, of course, we can't ignore that as well. I think every evil is an evil at the end of the day. The gravity and the seriousness of that, that needs to be addressed accordingly.
But the psychosis building up because of these games, it needs very serious attention.
And also, sir, I was seeing, reading this report which also suggested that, when children are exposed to such, violent games, it also has a kind of an impact on their physical health too, because they are more prone to heart disease that way. They can even develop, kind of a different kind of diseases which impact their health physically. So is that true?
Yeah, this is true. When a minor gets exposed to any kind of a violent scene on the screen at a very young age, he or she can develop emotional PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
If someone witnesses a murder in the real life, can develop post-traumatic stress disorder. And if they witness this thing at a minor age on screen, they can develop post-traumatic stress disorder either.
Right.
Also, I would like to draw your attention towards one of the very common disorder happening nowadays, which parents feel really alarming about their children, is the sleep disorder.
Right.
And when they go to bed, I mean, when the parents they go to sleep, they think their children are sleeping, but actually they're not sleeping. They're up till 5 o'clock in the morning. They're up till 7 o'clock.
They're addicted with their phones, playing on their phones, basically using social media. So I think by and large, at the end of the day, whether it's electronic media, print media, social media, so when we talk about, of course, the media's impact, its role, we need to address all. And of course, in this is exactly the reason why I put this question to you regarding, usage of such violence inciting games. Because they in themselves also contribute to it, and this is something which needs to be addressed. Your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, madam. I think we must also talk about the rights of those children which we often ignore. We are generally talking about children whose violations have come to your notice, but what about those children and their rights whose violations usually go unnoticed? For example, children who are in orphanages, children who might be abandoned, or for that matter, maybe, street children or beggars. So does basically NCRC's work also extend to protecting such children?
Again, a very, very important question, because you talk about those children who are unnoticed, or street children, or beggars, or domestic child laborers. Currently, if you really ask me, there is no such strong mechanism available for street children, and same is the case for domestic child labor. Few months back, NCRC has issued a very comprehensive strategy policy document on street children, which clearly entails the framework which the concerned policymakers and concerned institutions should be adopted to address this issue. Overall, definitely we are just doing tidbits with this, but mainly I believe that these domestic, child labor, there should be a comprehensive legislation on it. There's a need for a comprehensive legislation on street children. But other than that, what is needed most is that all those stakeholders, particularly police, Ministry of Human Rights, Social Welfare Department, Labor Department, Commissioner, DC, all those concerned departments should come forward and they should complement each other's, efforts and mandates, and they should come at one platform and have a one window operation to address the issues of these children. Because if you normally what happens is in Pakistan, if there is child beggary, you call police and ask them to deal with it. There is no such law under which police is supposed to address this issue. So I believe, and this is what we are advocating through our recommendations. We have been sending recommendations to the concerned chief secretaries, to the concerned social welfare department, to the concerned all those protection bureaus, because until and unless certain steps are not taken as a political will by the policymakers.
I think that's very rightly put by yourself, madam, that there's no denying to the fact that when we talk about stakeholders, there needs to be coordination amongst all, be it civil society, be it government, be it police, be it judiciary, media too for that matter, on which I'll come to you, Elia. I think you would want to add something to this, because I know you're very actively using social media platforms to just not interview politicians, but you're very vocal about such issues as well.
Yeah, so as you know, I lead Naya Daur Media. It's a digital platform, and over there we particularly cover such issues, and with a way to raise awareness, and also there is a kind of an arrangement where the issues that get more traction, or people who are more that is more well received are given more attention. But sometimes these issues which we cover do not get the kind of traction that we would want, but we still try to cover them with a view to raise awareness, in hopes that,
which is good,
some person in authority would see it and take the requisite action that we have recommended. And I personally think that every week I have this policy at our platform, that every week we give space to at least one writer who can clearly define what sexual abuse is, particularly in terms of when it happens to children, what can be done.
So how do you propose, in the capacity of a journalist, that what are the do's and what are the don'ts which we must adhere to, especially when we are reporting on such sensitive issues which involve child rights?
Yeah, right. So at our platform we have this policy that while covering a sensitive an issue of where a child victim is involved, we will never reveal their identity. And it happens, even mainstream channels sometimes reveal identity of the victims, and it kind of undermines their security, it puts them at risk. So we are very clear, and we have this very clear editorial policy about not showing pictures. If the picture is to be shown, it has to be blurred. Their name should not be revealed if they're if it's a case of a survivor who's still there fighting the circumstances. Yeah, and I think that all other cases where you see that if we see that a child is married or running away from home, there is a sensitive way to cover it. You cannot just blame the child, the minor. They may have been abducted. You cannot just say that, oh, how come a child ran away from their home? Their parents must have not.
Language, the kind of questioning, the tone that you said, there are so many things which make a difference.
Some empathy is needed in media. I think a little empathy goes a long way in making sure that your editorial choices are in a way that they don't harm anyone, they don't kind of add to the problem instead
empathy
of
and I think education at the end of the day. I think this is the stress that we've been working on, that if you educate somebody about something, then they might be able to report on it in a more coherent and informed manner. Sir, when we talk about doctors like yourself, psychiatrists like yourself, how do you feel can you make that contribution to policy when it comes to media sensitization, when it largely comes to protection of child rights? Because of course I understand that you do work with parents, you do work with educational institutions, because if a child is abused, or for that matter anything happens to a child, they do end up coming to doctors like yourself.
Yeah, I think that this question is very relevant and it's being neglected nowadays. It's a very simple answer to this question. The mental health biostatistics, they need to be collected from the clinicians all over the state, and that data should be provided to the policymakers and also the law enforcement agencies. We need to see that if we are not going to have that data, we see the courts coming up with the decisions that so many children lost their lives in making vulnerable TikTok videos, and that was banned in a province, and it was valid in another province. So somewhere the courts are deciding in the favor, they block it for a week, then the people come up because it's monetary aspect of it is involved. And I think so the mental health biostatistics,
I think they need to be kept in front. The research, the data, the statistics,
policy
and I think you need to be involved in policy making. Do something, I think, on which,
if not we people, but at least the data from we people, that how.
But I think your involvement is important in the sense, at least to the extent of the parents and to the extent of educational institutions, because if parents are coming in, they are taking in, bringing their child to people like yourself, then you do need to sit down with them and see that, if a child is abusing of abuse, if a child is becoming aggressive or violent, do they have a history of being exposed to violence? So I think all in all, everything collaborates together.
So I agree with this thing, and I think the psychiatrists, they should be a part of the policy making process. And if the biostatistics, the data reaches the policymakers, that almost like 50% or 60% cyber addiction cases are being reported averagely in the psychiatric clinics, or rehabilitation centers are being filled with cyber addicts now. So they must be getting alarmed themselves, but I'm pretty sure they are not aware of the data that's happening. In the clinics.
Which is why, sir, I raised this question. Your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, madam, and coming towards the conclusion of the show. How do you feel overall can we move towards prevention? Because like you yourself mentioned, prevention is better than cure. What do we have to do today in order to make sure that, our children's future tomorrow is safe and secure?
First of all, as you rightly mentioned, that there should be more focus on prevention and awareness raising, engaging media as a partner, and engaging all those strategies of social media, radio, electronic media, print media, and infotainment to address the issue too. But on the other hand, I believe change cannot come until and unless there is a strong political will, there is a strong national plan of action. Under that national plan of action, there should be budget allocation. And under that budget allocation, I believe in the national and provincial assemblies, there needs to have standing committees on child rights. And then, just like government appoints advisors, we need to have child rights advisors who can then, link up institutions with the assembly, so that if there is any issue, the agenda should be highlighted. It should come into the, national and provincial assemblies so that actions can be taken. Currently, if you really ask me, primarily social welfare department being the key stakeholder, they have a disconnect. So they need to be supported, revisited, strengthened, adequately equipped with all the resources, and they need to be backed up by the, higher ups, all the concerned duty bearers. Otherwise, change cannot come.
On which, Elia, I think you would want to add something, because I think a very pressing concern that we have these days is whether all these social media apps, they should be banned, whether they should be regulated. Because in the US, we have seen examples that, some schools, public schools more so, have actually banned the use of Facebook and, colleges too, for that matter, during the school hours. So, as a journalist, do you feel that, the way forward is to ban such social media apps or to regulate the usage?
I think blocking social media platforms is no solution to curbing violence against or committed by the children. I know that TikTok has had some, various harmful effects, and, children had been committing some, even adult people have been committing violence due to what happens on TikTok and in the process of making their TikTok videos. But at the same time, there are advantages of this platform as well. People are using it to make money. People who would not otherwise have employment are, having opportunities. So I don't think that we should advocate a ban on such platforms. Of course, their negative views and the way they're being, their harmful effects, they need to be addressed. If our government reaches out to TikTok and asks them to, provide some policy where children under 18 or 17 or 16 cannot use it, that can be done. There need to be some talks between the government and these platforms, their stakeholders, so they can come up with a solution which does not involve banning, because censorship banning, I think, is not the solution at all.
Right, Elia. And I think coming towards the conclusion of the show, we must also talk about this whole debate that we did, have at length today, that when we talk about, of course, enforcing child rights, when we talk about media sensitization, we must also do it in a manner which, of course, is in an effort with, in line with the social cultural norms that we do have. So how do you propose can they both go together?
Honestly, I don't see there's a crisis or that we need to create a false balance, because I fail to understand why people think that if you're talking about child rights, if you're talking about the raising awareness about issues pertaining to child sexual abuse, then how is it morally or culturally wrong? It is considered sensitive because we have created this narrative, thanks to the way society thinks, that people cannot speak about it. If somebody goes through such an experience, they cannot share their experience publicly. They need to just forget about it, not speak up. They're pushed into silence. Victims are not heard. Survivors cannot share their stories. So I think this is a travesty, the way they're treated.
At the end of the day, I think there is some connection with the society back at the end of the day, because if you talk about it, then you're stigmatized. If you're quiet about it, then you can't seek help.
Yeah,
but
so
then again, one way or the other, you are complying with the
No,
societal
of course,
expectations.
I understand how you're asking me to talk about the balance that has to be created. And of course, when you're talking about it in a mainstream discussion, you cannot just wish these people away. They have a stake. Even extremist quarters, they they are heard by our powerful people as well. So you cannot just say that, okay, your opinion doesn't matter. You have to listen to them as well somehow. I think that for starters, we need to respect a child's opinion as well. They need to be treated as human beings,
right,
as opposed to just treating them as an object and an entity that can be controlled. And it is such controlling is done more in the cases of women, female children, right? So the way they're controlled, I think if their individuality is kind of accepted and established by their parents as well, their decisions
by the society
are accepted.
at large.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. So I think another important thing, I know you're short of time, I'll just sum it up. This whole issue of children running away from their homes, we also need to, as I said earlier, see it, with a view to address the issue of child forced marriages that are done. Children are abducted, and then they end up getting married to somebody else, and we see that, okay, they say that we married of our own free will. So this issue is, I think, very important. The way media covers it,
that is extremely important.
When you're talking about children getting married without telling their parents, it is also a concern of them getting abducted and then the courts not being able to do anything about it. So we need to identify that what happens when a child just is abducted against their wishes, against their will, and they are forcibly married.
When they voluntarily go, I think the line of distinction needs to be very clear.
The legal age for marriage is 18 years in sin, but as you know, in other provinces it's
That's
different.
exactly what I highlighted.
So
madam,
yeah,
yes.
so we know that what a minor, before 18 years of age, you're a minor.
And
right?
then you look at the international context too, because you see even in different countries, somebody can acquire majority at a different age. But I understand, I think the basics, the definition, the way we perceive it, what particular case facts it has, whether it's a case of forced marriage, whether it's a case of, voluntary marriage, everything needs to be taken on its own merit, and they can't be a one-stop solution for all. Point is noted, on which I'll come to you, sir. I think we must also talk about the fact that, you've had that benefit of treating so many children who actually, suffer from substance abuse. So substance abuse, I at least feel at some level or the other, is also, promoted and propagated by media too, especially when we, show, heroes using e-cigarettes, or for that matter, using tobacco on, television ads for that matter. So how do you feel can media be more sensitive towards these issues? Whereas, of course, we understand that, this might be part of the whole game for them to promote a certain character a certain way or to build a certain storyline. It should be done in a way which, doesn't negatively impact the rights of a child, or for that matter, their, mental health.
Yeah, I think so. If any such kind of a scene is on air, on screen, that some kind of substance misuse, or usually we see the party drugs and all being glamorized on the social media, and especially in the dramas, and which also, influences the young children for the acceptability of these things which are so harmful for them. So I think so, first of all, there needs to be a policy about it. And again, coming towards the society, I feel there are huge walls of toxic shame at the collective consciousness in the society. They are afraid of talking about these things, because these drugs are the terrorists which have entered into the washrooms, which have entered into the drawing rooms, which have entered into the houses, and everyone is actually getting prepared for using the drugs, because they are so much glamorized
We've
the
seen
social
people,
media.
in fact, young adults using them and then
Yes.
committing different kind of
Yes.
crimes as well recently.
Yes.
So in that way,
And
but I think
especially,
where we talk about, of course, the projection that's usage of such drugs is given on media. I think a lot also comes on the parents as well. How they monitor their child's usage rather than just banning it for that matter. I think regulation is something which needs to kick in, and then of course educational institutions here, they also have a very important role to
yeah,
play.
I think so. This is the time. Never in the history, the relationship between the parents and the children, I mean the communication between the parents and the children and the teacher and the children have never been this important as they are now. Because teachers find it that they are just there for the academics and not for the morality. Earlier it was a assumed responsibility, the morality part. And parents think that we are the providers and we are making everything happen for them financially and providing shelter to them and the facilities to them. But the amount of communication gap which they have with their own children,
that is something that they need
which
to work
brings the children sharing all the sensitive things either on the social media platforms or the people outside the home.
But then again, you see, this is a circular argument, because a lot of times I've seen parents complain that they have that communication gap, probably because either one of the parent is very addicted to social media or the child is. So one way or the other, it is coming back to the basics that media, the narrative that is set by the media, the usage of media, whatever media form it may be, print, electronic, or for that matter, social media, which is the
For
media
that,
these
I think
days,
we need to have another
and of
program.
course the societal and the family fabric.
For I think that we need to have another program, that how the social media is making families dysfunctional.
Right, because I think at the end of the day, everything connects together. Thank you so much, sir. Your point is noted. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Elia. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, madam, for being here with us.
Thank you.
Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the role of media in the Pakistani society, more so when it comes to promotion and protection of child rights as they do exist in our society today. In this regard, the media has a very important responsibility to exhibit because, as they famously say, that with great power comes a great responsibility. The kind of narrative that media sets, that is very important. Media needs to understand the fact that whereas it has that duty to, of course, educate the masses, including children themselves, about their right, it must do so in a manner which does not violate their dignity or their right of privacy. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.